man in an impeccable suit poses alongside world boxing champions. Cameras capture his smile, his influence, his power. Nobody asks where the money comes from. Nobody mentions the ports flooded with South American cocaine. Nobody talks about the bodies left behind in Dublin. Because Daniel Kinahan is not just a boxing promoter. He is the architect of a criminal network that penetrated the British market with surgical precision, turning Ireland into a transit port and the United Kingdom into the true center of gravity of an empire valued at €1 billion. This is the story of how Ireland's most powerful cartel conquered British streets without firing a single shot on English soil. In April 2022, the United States Department of the Treasury announced unprecedented financial sanctions against the Kinahan organized crime group. Along with the announcement came a reward, $5 million for information leading to the capture of Daniel Kinahan, his father Christy, and his brother Christopher Jr. This was not a common police operation. It was a declaration of economic war against an organization that had transcended the borders of Irish street crime to become a global player in drug trafficking. The announcement was made simultaneously in Dublin, Washington, and London, a coordinated effort involving the Irish Garda Síochána, the UK's National Crime Agency, and the US Drug Enforcement Administration. Daniel Kinahan's name resonated in two completely opposite worlds. For the professional boxing industry, he was a respected advisor, the man who negotiated million-dollar fights between champions like Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. His social media showed photos with celebrities, luxury cars, and glamorous events across Dubai, Marbella, and London. For the anti-drug agencies of 3 continents, he was the operational director of a cartel responsible for trafficking tons of cocaine to Europe, laundering hundreds of millions of euros, and at least 18 murders linked to a gang war that bloodied Dublin for years. Intelligence reports described him as calculating, disciplined, and ruthless when necessary. But there was one piece of information that Irish authorities revealed for the first time that same day. Information that completely redefined the scale of the problem. 75% of the Kinahan cartel's income did not come from Ireland. It came from the United Kingdom. For more than a decade, while media headlines focused on shootings in Dublin and murders in Marbella, the true financial engine of the organization operated in silence from British cities. Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, Belfast. All connected to the same logistics network that began in the ports of Rotterdam and Antwerp, crossed the English Channel, and ended up distributing Colombian cocaine in every corner of British territory. The central question was evident. How did an Irish cartel, persecuted in its own country, manage to turn the United Kingdom into its main source of income? What structure, what contacts, what operational model allowed Dublin to be barely a quarter of the business, while London, Birmingham, and Manchester transformed into the financial arteries of a transnational criminal empire? The answer was fragmented among police statements, court documents, decrypted encrypted conversations, and testimonies from protected informants. But all the pieces converged on an uncomfortable truth. The Kinahan organized crime group had not conquered the British market by chance. It had strategically designed it, taking advantage of port infrastructure in Rotterdam and Antwerp, corruption networks in British and Irish customs, and an exceptional ability to blend in with the legal economy through the most popular sport on the planet. When US sanctions were made public, a sports management company based in the United Kingdom collapsed within days. MTK Global, which represented dozens of elite professional boxers and generated multi-million-dollar contracts, announced the immediate cessation of its operations. Its original founder, according to public records, had been Daniel Kinahan in 2012. Its visible partner in recent years had been Matthew Macklin, a former champion who insisted that Kinahan had sold his stake in 2017. But documents leaked by international investigations proved otherwise. They demonstrated that the company remained a vehicle for legitimization and influence for the cartel, used to launder money through inflated sports contracts, payments to athletes who served as frontmen, and real estate transactions linked to boxing events in Dubai, London, and Spain. And they demonstrated that the connection between boxing, the United Kingdom, and Irish drug trafficking was much deeper than anyone had imagined. Meanwhile, in Dubai, Daniel Kinahan remained untouchable. He resided in a city that for years had functioned as a golden refuge for European criminal bosses, where extradition laws were practically non-existent and money could move without questions. There he established shell companies registered under fictitious names, channeled illicit profits through investments in luxury real estate in Marina and Palm Jumeirah, and held meetings with other leaders of international cartels in seven-star hotels like the Burj Al Arab and Atlantis the Palm. Impunity seemed absolute. The Kinahans had built ties with powerful Emirati families, registered front companies operating in textiles, food, and business services, and enjoyed the implicit protection of a regime that turned a blind eye to organized crime as long as it brought foreign capital. But something had changed. US sanctions had turned every bank transaction into a risk, every flight into a possible extradition, every alliance into a potential betrayal. And in October 2024, when Emirati authorities arrested Sean McGovern, Daniel Kinahan's right-hand man and coordinator of logistics operations from Dubai, the message was clear. The sanctuary was closing. The central enigma of this story was not whether the Kinahan cartel was powerful. That was already established. The enigma was how they had managed to build an empire whose true heart beat on British territory, while the world looked toward Ireland. Christopher Kinahan Sr., known as the Dapper Don, built his criminal empire from the tough neighborhoods of North Dublin. During the 80s and 90s, while serving sentences in prisons in Ireland, the Netherlands and Belgium for heroin trafficking, cocaine possession, and money laundering. He accumulated contacts that would transform his local operation into a continental network. The historical context was favorable. During the Celtic Tiger, when Ireland experienced explosive economic growth between the mid-90s and late 2000s, organized crime also flourished. Irish gangs became professionalized, heroin trafficking gave way to cocaine, and Christy Kinahan took advantage of every gap in the system. In the late 90s, he formally founded the Kinahan Organized Crime Group, recruiting his sons Daniel and Christopher Jr. Daniel, born in 1977, demonstrated exceptional skills in logistics and public relations. Christopher Jr. focused on money laundering and property management. The operational model was devastatingly effective. They imported cocaine from Colombia, Peru, and Venezuela using maritime routes to Rotterdam and Antwerp, Europe's largest ports. Both handled millions of containers annually, making it nearly impossible to inspect every load. The Kinahans infiltrated port personnel, bribed customs, and established extraction cells to recover cocaine hidden in legitimate containers. The drugs were transported to Dublin, but most were immediately diverted to the United Kingdom. Geography facilitated everything. Commercial ferries, private planes, small boats easily crossed the Irish Sea. Border controls between Northern Ireland and the Republic were minimal, and the British market offered massive demand, high prices, and local gangs willing to buy wholesale without asking questions. The Kinahans understood something crucial. They needed legitimacy. Daniel Kinahan, a boxing fan, co-founded MGM in Marbella in the 2000s, a company that transformed into MTK Global. It represented professional boxers, organized events, and generated ties with promoters, broadcasters, and legitimate sponsors. Daniel photographed himself with world champions, negotiated million-dollar fights, and built relationships with sports figures and even Gulf royalty. In 2017, he advised KHK Sports, owned by Sheikh Khalid bin Hamad Al Khalifa of Bahrain. Boxing was not just a facade, it was a networking tool that allowed him to launder money through sports contracts and real estate transactions. The British structure was consolidated with Thomas Kavanagh, a Dubliner with an extensive criminal record, who moved to England in early 2010, escaping Irish police pressure and the Criminal Assets Bureau that had frozen his properties in Dublin. He established his base in Tamworth, a quiet town near Birmingham, where his presence went unnoticed for years, coordinating from there the reception of massive cocaine shipments from the Netherlands and Belgium, and supervising distribution to local gangs in Liverpool, Manchester, Glasgow, and Belfast, who acted as retail distributors without necessarily knowing the ultimate origin of the drug. The National Crime Agency described him as the Cartel's European CEO, a title that reflected his control over the entire British operation. His fortified mansion with bulletproof windows held cash in multiple currencies, bladed and firearms, and encrypted devices that directly linked the British operation with Daniel Kinahan in Dubai. Liam Byrne led the Irish branch from Crumlin, operating LS Active Car Sales as a perfect money laundering front. The company barely sold cars, instead moving luxury vehicles between Ireland and UK, providing high-end cars to cartel members as a form of payment, and channeling illicit profits through fictitious transactions that appeared legitimate to tax authorities. The system worked with military precision. Cocaine from South America to Rotterdam or Antwerp in containers mixed with legitimate cargo. Specialized extraction teams. Young people recruited from marginalized neighborhoods paid €2,000 per kilo. Infiltrated ports hidden in empty containers declared as such. Recovered drugs following GPS coordinates provided by corrupt port employees. It was transported to clandestine warehouses in the Netherlands for cutting with levamisole or phenacetin, packaged in 1 kilo vacuum-sealed bricks. Commercial cargo trucks crossed into the United Kingdom via the Eurotunnel or ferries from Hoek van Holland to Harwich. Kavanagh coordinated deliveries to local distributors who paid immediate cash, between £20,000 and £25,000 sterling per kilo, depending on purity. That cash was vacuum-packed to eliminate odors, hidden in double-bottomed vehicles, returned to Ireland or directly to Spain, and laundered through real estate companies buying inflated properties, alcoholic beverage businesses like Nero Drinks, or conversions to cryptocurrencies on exchanges without adequate regulation. A shipment of 200 kilos generated between £4 and £5 million sterling in the British market. The Kinahans moved several tons annually. The profits were astronomical, estimated at hundreds of millions of euros per year from British operations alone. Brexit generated uncertainty in border controls. The pandemic saturated customs, and British police cuts reduced port surveillance. The Kinahans took advantage of every crack. The qualitative leap came when they established a base in Dubai. The Emirates offered total impunity, without effective extradition treaties, an opaque financial system, and local elites willing to negotiate without questions. Daniel, Christy, and Christopher Jr. operated openly from mid-2010. In Dubai, Daniel organized meetings with global criminal leaders. In 2017, the DEA identified a meeting at the Burj Al Arab between Kinahan, Raffaele Imperiale of the Camorra, Ridwan Taghi of the Moroccan-Dutch Mafia, and Edin Gachanan. That meeting consolidated a super cartel that controlled a third of cocaine trafficking to Europe. The pieces were complete. The Kinahans had built a network from South America to the Middle East, infiltrating ports, corrupting officials, laundering millions, and legitimizing themselves through boxing. But every criminal structure has a breaking point. For years, the cartel avoided violence on British territory, concentrating logistics operations in the UK and reserving armed conflicts for Ireland and Spain. That tactic kept a low profile before British authorities while accumulating fortunes. But in September 2015, everything changed. Gary Hutch, nephew of Jerry the Monk Hutch, was murdered in Marbella. He had worked with Daniel Kinahan but generated suspicions. Police informant, attempted murder of a high-ranking member. Daniel ordered his execution. Gary was riddled with bullets in an apartment complex. His death triggered a war. Jerry Hutch could not ignore his nephew's murder. For decades, Hutch and Kinahan coexisted in Dublin, respecting territories. that balance broke. The response came on February 5, 2016 at a boxing event. The official weigh-in for a European fight was held at the Regency Hotel. MGM organized it. Several Kinahan members attended, including Daniel. But a commando of hitmen disguised as emergency police burst in armed with AK-47s. They were looking for Daniel. But he had left minutes before. They killed David Byrne, a 34-year-old cartel associate. The hitmen escaped in a van, found burned. The images shocked Ireland. Daytime shooting at a public event, with hitmen disguised as police. The Kinahan response was immediate and ruthless. 3 days later, on February 8, 2016, Eddie Hutch, Jerry's brother and Gary's uncle, was shot dead while returning to his home in North Dublin. The hitmen waited for him outside his home, chased him inside as he tried to escape, and executed him with multiple shots. The following years transformed Dublin into a war zone. 18 deaths linked to the Hutch-Kinahan feud. 6 members of the Hutch side were executed in street attacks, including Noel King-Size Duggan, a close friend of Jerry Hutch murdered in his car, and Michael Barr, a dissident Republican with IRA ties who allegedly supplied weapons for the Regency attack. 1 from the Kinahan side. The rest, victims of mistaken identity, civilians without criminal connections riddled by mistake when hitmen confused targets. The violence reached unprecedented levels in modern Irish criminal history. 2016 was the bloodiest year with 10 deaths, 6 of them in the first 6 months. The uncontrolled violence attracted massive police attention. The Irish government, pressured by horrified public opinion, created an elite special force within the National Drugs and Organized Crime Bureau with unlimited budget and authority to operate coordinately with international agencies. More than 80 Kinahan cartel members were arrested in joint operations involving Ireland, United Kingdom, Spain, the Netherlands, and agencies like Europol and the US DEA. Thomas Kavanagh, the British CEO of the cartel, was captured in a night raid on his Tamworth mansion in 2019 when National Crime Agency agents burst in with search warrants and found massive evidence of drug trafficking, sentencing him to 21 years in prison for coordinating the trafficking of more than £30 million in cocaine to the United Kingdom in just 2 years of operation. Liam Byrne was also arrested, prosecuted, and sentenced to extensive terms. But Daniel, Christy Sr., and Christopher Jr. remained untouchable in Dubai. Without effective extradition treaties, authorities could not act. Then the United States intervened. The DEA had been monitoring the cartel for years. Agents infiltrated communication networks. Panama Papers revealed shell companies in British Virgin Islands. Encrypted Sky ECC conversations demonstrated that Daniel coordinated shipments from Dubai with impressive operational detail. April 2022, U.S. Treasury Department announced financial sanctions against KOCG under Transnational Criminal Organizations Law. Christy Sr., Daniel, Christopher Jr. individually designated. 4 associates sanctioned: John Morrissey, Sean McGovern, Ian Dixon, others. 3 companies: Nero Drinks, Hupo Sports, Dukashu Consultancy. The sanctions blocked anyone or any company doing business with the Kinahans from the US financial system. Banks closed accounts. Airlines banned flights. Legitimate companies cut ties. MTK Global collapsed first. The company announced cessation of operations on April 20th, 2022, 8 days after sanctions. It faced unprecedented levels of scrutiny. Major promoters cut relationships with its boxers. Bob Yalen resigned, citing intense pressure. The company, which represented world champions and organized million-dollar events, collapsed in 2 weeks. Tyson Fury, heavyweight world champion publicly advised by Kinahan, remained silent after sanctions. When journalists asked about his relationship with Kinahan, he responded that it was none of your business, and he was just a fighter. Court documents in California revealed that Top Rank paid millions to Kinahan as exclusive advisor outside the United States. September 2022, John Morrissey arrested in Marbella. He had fled Ireland 2 decades earlier after a plot against a criminal assets official. From Spain, he directed South American shipments and laundered money through Nero drinks. Documents showed he handed over parts of Nero drinks to Daniel as compensation for confiscated drugs. February 2023, raid in Dublin seized 40 kilos cocaine, 78,000 euros, 2,000 nitrous oxide containers, hydraulic press, encrypted devices. 8 arrested. October 2024, they arrested Sean McGovern in Dubai. Daniel's closest advisor, he managed communications, sold cocaine in kilos, coordinated criminal meetings. His arrest was the first time a high-ranking Kinahan was detained in the Emirates. The sanctuary was closing. Police sources reported that, fearing McGovern's extradition, the cartel designed plans to abandon Dubai and move to Russia. But that option involved risks. Russia did not offer the same financial infrastructure or freedom of movement. European authorities continued dismantling operations. Encrypted conversations revealed Kinahan-Hezbollah links in a failed attempt to smuggle 2 tons of cocaine from Venezuela to Ireland in September 2023. It was the largest seizure in Irish history. They also discovered collaborations with Comando Vermelho of Brazil, Cartel del Sol of Venezuela, and outlaw bikers in Australia and Canada. The organization's development had reached its peak. From small street traffickers to super cartel leaders with presence in 20 countries. But every empire has a breaking point. April 12, 2022. Claire Cronin, U.S. Ambassador to Ireland, appeared with Garda officials and British National Crime Agency. The announcement: $5 million for information leading to financial destruction of the cartel or capture of leaders. Treasury sanctions immediately in effect. The message: impunity ended. Immediate consequences. Daniel Kinahan disappeared from public radar. Twitter stopped updating. Press conferences ceased. The few statements via intermediaries denied criminal links, describing accusations as unfounded and sanctions unfair. But facts spoke for themselves. Banks closed accounts linked to Kinahan companies. Airlines added names to exclusion lists. Emirati authorities, pressured by the United States, investigated properties and businesses in Dubai. MTK Global's collapse was not a simple business failure. It publicly confirmed that boxing had been a legitimization tool for the cartel. For years, Daniel cultivated relationships with promoters, broadcasters, athletes. He negotiated million-dollar fights, posed with champions, donated to charities, building an image of successful businessmen. But behind it operated a drug trafficker coordinating tons of cocaine from South America to Europe. Sanctions exposed the shell company network. Dukashu Consultancy in Dubai channeled illicit profits through fictitious consulting contracts. Hupo Sports, controlled by Ian Dixon with 49% shares but 80% profits. Nero Drinks, formerly owned by Morrissey's wife, but controlled by him, with stakes handed to Daniel compensating for seized drugs. British response was forceful. Thomas Kavanagh, serving 21 years for drug trafficking, accused of new crime, firearms trafficking conspiracy. October 2024, Kavanagh and Liam Byrne sentenced to 6 and 5 additional years for hiding arsenals in UK. With combined sentences and discounts, Kavanagh would spend 10 more years in prison. He would be 67 when released. Liam Byrne faced an equally bleak future. LS Active car sales dismantled by Irish criminal assets, property seized, distribution network dismantled. The sanctions made him a financial pariah. No banks, no legitimate businesses, no refugee jurisdiction. Emblematic case, Jerry Hutch. April 2023, after high-profile trial in special criminal court, Hutch acquitted of David Byrne murder charge at Regency. Verdict generated controversy. Insufficient evidence for conviction. Hutch walked free, but reputation destroyed. War with Kinahan devastated his organization. 6 Hutch members murdered, dozens in prison. The Hutch name, synonymous with respect for decades, now represented defeat. The true breaking point was not judicial, it was strategic. October 2024. Ireland signed extradition treaty with United Arab Emirates. Helen McEntee, Justice Minister, declared that significant number of Irish criminals remained in Dubai. Treaty would allow requesting their return. First case, Sean McGovern, arrested in Dubai, extradited to Ireland to face murder and organized crime direction charges. His arrest sent a clear message to Daniel, Christy Sr., Christopher Jr. Dubai was no longer safe. Michael O'Sullivan, former Garda Assistant Commissioner, declared that sense of Dubai as safe haven was in ruins. Sources indicated that Daniel was the most vulnerable of the 3 leaders. Christy Sr., in his 70s, had ceded operational control. Christopher Jr. had less direct contact with operational network. But Daniel had been personally involved in operations coordination, territorial conflict management, communications during war with Hutch. That exposed him to charges of organized crime direction, conspiracy to murder, large-scale money laundering. The breaking point had arrived. US sanctions destroyed legal operations. UK arrests dismantled British distribution network. Extradition treaty with Dubai eliminated safest refuge. Decrypted encrypted conversations provided direct evidence. The Kinahan empire, built over 3 decades, was collapsing. Today, the Kinahan cartel still exists, but is a shadow of what it was. Daniel Kinahan, Christy Kinahan Sr., and Christopher Kinahan Jr. remain whereabouts unknown, though believed to be in Dubai or in transit to Russia. Sean McGovern faces trial in Ireland on murder charges. Thomas Kavanagh serves sentence in a British prison. Liam Byrne is behind bars. John Morrissey awaits extradition from Spain, and more than 80 organization members have been imprisoned in joint operations between Ireland, United Kingdom, Spain, Netherlands, and United States. The Kinahan cartel's legacy is complex and multifaceted. On one hand, they represent one of the most successful cases of transnational criminal market penetration in European history. They managed to turn the United Kingdom into the financial engine of their operation without generating significant violence on British territory. They infiltrated Europe's most important ports. They corrupted officials in multiple countries. They laundered hundreds of millions of euros through legitimate companies. And they used professional boxing as a legitimization vehicle with unprecedented sophistication. But on the other hand, they left a trail of death and destruction. 18 people died in the war with the Hutch gang. Dozens of families were destroyed. Entire communities in Dublin were traumatized by shootings in the streets, and thousands of addicts in the United Kingdom, Ireland, and the rest of Europe consumed the cocaine that the Kinahan cartel imported for years. The impact on professional boxing was devastating. MTK Global, which represented some of the world's best boxers, collapsed. Athletes who had built their careers with the company were forced to seek new representatives within weeks. Promoters who had worked with Kinahan faced public scrutiny and reputational damage, and the entire industry had to confront an uncomfortable truth. For years, one of its most influential operators had been an international drug trafficker. The Kinahan operational model also left lessons for security agencies. They demonstrated that modern organized crime does not operate like traditional 20th century mafias. They don't need constant violence. They don't need visible territorial control. They only need access to logistics infrastructure, corruption networks, and legitimization tools. The Kinahans understood that true power in 21st century drug trafficking doesn't come from controlling neighborhoods, but from controlling ports, banks, and legal companies. Authorities also learned the importance of international cooperation. U.S. sanctions were made possible thanks to years of joint work between the DEA, Irish Garda, British National Crime Agency, and Europol. Arrests in Dubai required coordinated diplomatic pressure. And seizures in Rotterdam and Antwerp depended on intelligence-sharing systems between multiple countries. Without that collaboration, the Kinahan cartel would still be operating with impunity. But perhaps the deepest legacy is the reminder that no criminal organization is invulnerable. For years, the Kinahans seemed untouchable. They operated from Dubai with total freedom. They attended public events. They photographed themselves with celebrities. and they accumulated fortunes while authorities pursued them unsuccessfully. But U.S. sanctions demonstrated that true power is not in weapons or violence, but in access to the global financial system. And once that access was closed, the entire empire crumbled. Today, the cocaine market in the United Kingdom still exists. New organizations have occupied the vacuum left by the Kinahans. Local gangs in Liverpool, Manchester, and Glasgow have established direct contacts with South American suppliers, and the ports of Rotterdam and Antwerp continue to be critical nodes for drug trafficking to Europe. But none of those organizations has managed to replicate the scale, sophistication, and global reach that characterized the Kinahan Cartel at its peak. The story of the Kinahan Cartel is ultimately the story of how Irish organized crime transcended its local origins to become a global actor. It is the story of how professional boxing was infiltrated by drug traffickers. And it is the story of how a Dublin family built an empire valued at €1 billion only to see it collapse under the weight of international sanctions. But above all, it is a reminder that in the world of organized crime, there are no permanent refugees, no eternal alliances, and no guaranteed impunity. There is only one certainty. Sooner or later, the past always catches up with those who try to escape from it.